Inaz and the Two Unmarriageable Lovers. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This story is narrated in 4 books. Book 1. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief passages in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the real love story of 2 unmarriageable lovers. Therefore, all names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental. Chapter 50. The Revenge of the Ex-Boyfriend of the Muslim Apostate Girl. In the meantime, Tariq Harun Al-Ajabo did everything he could in order to take revenge on his beautiful Arab ex-girlfriend Inaz. He wanted to punish her for her abominable apostasy and her rejection of him as her lawful Muslim husband. He understood that the only way he could punish her is either to separate her from her extremely handsome Ethiopian husband or get her killed as an apostate girl by her dangerous Muslim father. The African lover Tariq became outraged when his Muslim wife Inaz came to him along with the beautiful Joseph and some Indian Christians and confronted him. Then she sharply rebuked and humiliated him in front of his despicable cousin Khalid and his cousin's adulterous Christian girlfriend Mary Akal. At that moment, he felt as if his Arab girlfriend had stabbed his heart with a poisonous dagger. His tears fell like hot acid on his cheeks. He became inflated with indescribable rage. If he happened to have a knife or gun in his hand, he would have slain his Muslim wife in an honor killing. He felt like a husband who traveled abroad for a while, and when he returned home, he found his beautiful wife on bed with another handsome man, in the very act of committing adultery. Moreover, his wrath was multiplied when he understood that his beloved Arab girlfriend Inaz, who became his lawful Muslim wife, had rejected him because he is supposedly a Karabi boy who looks like an ugly black crow. And she fell in love with a beautiful Ethiopian boy who is called by everyone the White Indian Peacock and Sayyidina Yusuf al-Jamil. She also denied him as her first African lover to have sex with her and in the past refused to allow him to claim her virginity and purity and had allowed the uncircumcised infidel Christian dog to fuck her circumcised vagina and defile her body through having haram sex with her as a Muslim girl before her apostasy from Islam. Tariq, like all other Muslim Sudanese students, refused to recognize and accept his Arab girlfriend's Christian marriage with Joseph. He referred to it as shameful adulterous relation. Therefore, he called his matrimony with her the halal Islamic marriage and her relationship with the Christian boy haram marriage. Accordingly, the rejected lover decided not to return to Cairo until he did damage to the phony Christian marriage of Inaz and also destroy her reputation and her life as well. After seeing her holding the hand of the beautiful Ethiopian boy, Tariq concluded that his beloved Inaz had forsaken his pure and genuine love, destroyed the honor of her proud Arab parents, and sold her beautiful religion of Islam for the mere lust for the marvelous beauty of that infidel Christian dog. Now, there is nothing that can restore peace to his agitated mind, bring joy to his bleeding heart, and heal his injured dignity except revenge on his former Arab girlfriend in its fullest form. To carry out that revenge, the rejected boyfriend determined to create division between Inaz and her church, and that by casting doubts on the validity and lawfulness of her Christian marriage. He knew that their Islamic halal marriage, which he had conducted with her father in a mosque in Egypt, was rejected by her church because it had taken place after her Christian haram marriage. So, he understood, if he could supply legal evidence that he and Inaz had gotten married prior to her Christian haram marriage, he might convince her church pastor to nullify her latter marriage and recognize her former marriage. He had achieved that goal through producing a marriage certificate of his pseudo-marriage with Inaz in Pune city. Tariq anticipated that his beloved Inaz still might not leave her handsome Christian conjugal partner and return to him. He thought after she found a beautiful white boy who looks like a colorful Indian peacock, the beautiful Arab girl Anaz had decided to leave her ugly black African boyfriend who, according to her proud Arab parents, looks uglier than a Sudanese crow. His main goal was to create a problem between Anaz and her Christian church. Tariq was informed by the Sudanese Mary Akal that after his cousin had confronted Anaz in the church and revealed her Islamic marriage with him, many Christians in the church began to doubt the lawfulness of her Christian marriage. Even so, the rejected boyfriend had not expected that Anaz and her new lover would prefer to be thrown out of the church than be separated from each other. So, his first evil scheme was partially fulfilled as he expected. After creating division between Anaz and her church and causing her and her Christian husband to be excommunicated from their church, the vengeful African boyfriend decided to go to the Indian law. During that private meeting in the office of Mr. Vijay Alexander, Tariq heard that Anaz can go to jail if anybody has reported her unlawful Christian marriage. Therefore, he went to an Indian Muslim lawyer and appointed him as his advocate and asked him to bring to the attention of His Majesty, the judge of the Bombay court, the unlawfulness of his Muslim wife's marriage to a Christian man while she is still bound by her Islamic marriage with him. The foolish Sudanese boy thought that the Indian secular court is somehow like his Islamic Sharia court, can cancel the Christian haram marriage and bring his rebellious Muslim wife through law enforcement to her Muslim husband by issuing the verdict of obedience against her. The Muslim lawyer disappointed him when he told him the secular court system in India cannot force a woman to live with a man. She does not want to live with him. Such a matter can happen in Sudan or Somalia or Saudi Arabia, but not in Hindustan. Nevertheless, the Muslim lawyer assured Tariq that his Muslim wife can be prosecuted by the Indian court for marrying a man while she is still married to another man. But for the court to finalize such a charge, it may take 2 to 3 years. The reason given for such a delay is that there are over 1 million lawsuits submitted prior to his lawsuit. Tariq knew he could not leave his engineering study in Egypt and wait for such a long legal dispute in India. He anticipated that during that long period Anaz may give birth to 2 or 3 children to her filthy infidel pig. So, the wrathful lover forgot about his lawsuit and shifted his attention to another person who can carry his vengeance to its fullness. Now there is nothing that can pacify the wrath of the rejected lover except the painful demise of his unfaithful Arab girlfriend Anaz. Consequently, Tariq phoned the proud father of the apostate girl and broke to him the incredible news. He said to him, his infamous daughter had sold her religion and spoiled her family's name because she fell in love with an Ethiopian Christian boy. The boy is so handsome, and due to his remarkable looks, the Sudanese students nicknamed him the White Indian Peacock and Sayyidina Yusuf al-Jamil. Then Tariq began to feed his second father-in-law many lies. He told him his bad daughter had been impregnated by her Ethiopian lover before she married him, and she also lived with him in the same apartment in an open, shameful, adulterous relation. When the righteous Muslim Sudanese students protested and tried to separate her from that beautiful Christian boy, she decided to marry him. However, the Ethiopian boy refused to marry her unless she first leaves Islam and becomes Christian like him. Also, he convinced her to divorce her lawful Arab husband Osama Hashim Sulla through an Indian court. For his sake, she sold her religion, accepted his religion, and divorced her Muslim husband. He then took her to his church and baptized her as a Christian. After her baptism, she changed her name from Anaz Ahmed Sulla to Mary Joseph Abraha. Her abominable deeds and disgraceful relation with that infidel boy led the Sudanese embassy in New Delhi to send 2 of its diplomats to Bombay. Those 2 Sudanese diplomats met with Anaz and tried to convince her to rebuke Satan and return to the religion of her ancestors. They also tried to make her leave her adulterous relation with the infidel Ethiopian pig and live a good moral life like any other Sudanese female student. But the stubborn apostate girl Anaz insulted them and spat on the face of one of them and then called the police on them. She also spat on the face of him, although he is her lawful Muslim husband, and said to him to go you and my wicked and murderous Arab father to hell. She even gave him her middle finger in front of his cousin Khalid, many Sudanese Muslim students, and other Christians. Her negative reaction and evil attitudes had led those good Sudanese diplomats to seek the help of some Indian Muslim policemen for punishing her. Through them, they managed to raid her apartment and arrested her along with her unclean Christian conjugal partner. On the same night of her detention, they took her to the Bombay International Airport and attempted to send her back to her family in Sudan. Unfortunately, one Indian Christian wealthy business tycoon from her church saw her at the international airport and contacted some corrupt top officials in the government of Maharashtra and informed them that the apostate Sudanese Muslim girl has been kidnapped by some Muslim police officers and planning to send her to Khartoum against her will. Accordingly, those Indian politicians reported the so-called kidnap of Inaz to their friends in the Bombay Criminal Investigation Department. Consequently, the head of the CID sent 3 police helicopters full of cops and raided the international airport and arrested the Muslim police officers, the 2 Sudanese diplomats, and the emir of the Muslim Brotherhood of Bombay branch. In that way, Inaz was freed from those good Muslim men and allowed to return to her uncircumcised infidel dog who made her pregnant by an unclean baby pig. Therefore, the instigation and lies of Tariq made the father of the so-called accursed and abominable apostate girl Inaz swear by his holy Quran and the honor of his great-grandfather the Prophet Muhammad that he must reach his rebellious daughter and slaughter her. He said he is going to fly to Pakistan, then smuggle himself through Kashmir province and enter India and come to Bombay and cut his accursed daughter in bits and pieces. Before killing her, he must open her stomach with his big dagger while she is alive and take the haram baby from her womb and dash its head on the wall. Then he must slay her and slaughter her uncircumcised infidel Christian husband who dared to rape the circumcised pussy of a Muslim girl and filled her womb with an unclean baby like him. Chapter 51. The Hazardous Trip. The so-called lawful husband of Inaz sent through WhatsApp and Messenger some photos and videos to his second father-in-law Mr. Ahmed Sulla. Those pictures and videos were created by his contemptible cousin. Khalid had clicked photos of Inaz and Joseph without their knowledge. His female sex partner Mary Akal also helped him in secretly taking the photos of Inaz and Joseph while the 2 lovers were sitting side by side inside the church hall. Also, when Inaz came to his apartment and quarreled with Tariq, the despicable Khalid took her photos along with the beautiful Joseph and Mr. Vijay Alexander and Mrs. Mary Alexander. The hateful Khalid had also managed to secretly record the private church meeting in Mr. Alexander's office. In that private meeting, Inaz called her father the evil and murderous father. The proud Sudanese lawyer almost exploded in anger after seeing those disgraceful photos and hearing those personal insults hurled at him by his own daughter Inaz. If she happened to be near him, he would have definitely spilled her blood and burned her defiled body with unquenchable fire. The deeply hurt father, the proud Sudanese lawyer, Mr. Ahmed Sulla swore by the honor of his great-grandfather, the Prophet Muhammad, to reach his apostatized daughter and flay her flesh, rip off the bastard baby out of her defiled womb, and kill her uncircumcised infidel Christian dog. In order to reach his accursed apostate daughter and brutally murder her along with her infidel Christian pig, and also slay their yet-to-be-born baby dog, Mr. Ahmed Sulla decided to travel to the Muslim land of Pakistan and seek the help of some Pakistani Muslim mujahideen and bribe them. He heard that some Pakistani and Afghani mujahideen can smuggle into India some terror-inspiring Muslim holy warriors of jihad through the Kashmir border. Then those mujahideen will carry some terrorist attacks on the accursed Hindu idolaters. He just needs to bribe them with a few US dollars to smuggle him across the Pakistani-Indian border to Kashmir province. So, the wheel of revenge and honor-killing is set in motion again. The deeply hurt and insulted father applied for a Pakistani visiting visa and in less than an hour, he got it. Before he flew to Pakistan, he went to his arrogant wife Mrs. Saham Sulla and told her why their only evil daughter did what she did. He then said he is going to reach her through the Pakistani-Indian border and kick the devils out of her demonic-infested head. He will try first to convince her to leave that filthy infidel Christian dog who raped and impregnated her and rebuke Satan and return to Islam. If the Almighty Allah helps him to win his daughter back as he did before in Pune city, then he must bring her back with him to her fatherland. Before he will fly her back to her motherland, he has to take her to an Indian female Muslim doctor and get that haram baby aborted. But if she refuses to rebuke the accursed devil and kick out her infidel dog, then he must carry the commandment of Allah and his prophet out on her, and that by slaughtering her with his own knife and burning her defiled body into ashes. As an apostate Muslim girl, his infallible prophet said she must be killed, and according to the Sharia, her unclean dead body shouldn't be buried, but be burned. The vengeful Muslim husband told his arrogant Arab wife before he kissed her goodbye that his mission to India will take him either to the paradise and the marriage of the 72 eternal virgins or return with his repentant daughter as the victorious father, the proud Arab man, the successful Sudanese lawyer, Mr. Ahmed Saleh, the great-grandson of Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Hashim ibn Abdul Muttalib ibn Kilab, the son of dogs. So, the Muslim father has expected either to be shot and killed by the Indian Army of the Border or slain by the police of Bombay. If such a bad end happens to him, he should consider it a victory because he will die as a Muslim martyr and go to paradise where the rivers of wine, honey, and milk plus the 72 virgins. To fulfill his God-given mission, the angry man went through the valley of the shadow of terror and terrorists during his long trip from Pakistan to the Indian Kashmir province. His risky trip is 100 times more dangerous and painful than that his daughter and her African boyfriend went through when they fled from Saudi Arabia and traveled on foot for 1 month through the war-torn country of Yemen. Likewise, most of his trips across the border were done on foot. He lost so much flesh during that hellish journey. Sometimes, he was forced by the instinct of survival to eat grass like an animal. He also ate birds, rats, lizards, and other reptiles. 3 times, the outraged father was forced to drink his own urine to quench his thirst. Many times, he buried his body under the trees' leaves and wild animals' holes to avoid capture by the Indian soldiers. He saw many Pakistani terrorists of those who smuggled him got shot and killed by the Indian army. After a hazardous and extremely dangerous trip, which took over a month, the vengeful Muslim father, at last, reached his final destination at the Indian cosmopolitan city of Bombay. Chapter 52. The Expired Passport. 40 days passed since Inaz and her husband Joseph had attended that UN office interview with the biased Muslim woman Mrs. Salma Muhammad Ahmed. Until that day, Inaz does neither receive a positive nor a negative reply from her female legal representative. Finally, the difficult financial condition compelled the persecuted lovers to decide to follow the advice of the UN female legal representative and travel back to Africa and settle permanently in Ethiopia. The destitute couple reached the stage of not being able to buy new clothes or shoes. Their clothes are torn and became like rags hanging on their bodies. They became worse than the Indian beggars on the streets of Bombay. They had been led by their miserable situation to sell many of their personal stuff to buy food and pay the rent of their hut. The handsome Joseph stopped going to his medical college and began the process of taking his loving, beautiful wife Inaz to live with him in his family's house in Addis Ababa. He decided not to tell his parents and siblings about his Sudanese wife until they reached there. For the couple to travel to Africa, Inaz needs to get a spousal visa to Ethiopia. She has to travel again to New Delhi and go to the Ethiopian embassy and apply for a wife visa. But before going to her husband's embassy, she must first renew her passport. Her current Sudanese passport expired a month ago. No embassy in the world can issue a visa to an expired passport. To renew her passport, she has to go to the place where that pernicious plot of her kidnap and forcible transfer to her country was hatched. Inaz is scared that she may meet the same end the Saudi dissident journalist Jamal Adnan Khashoggi had met after entering his country's consulate in Istanbul, Turkey. In the eyes of her Muslim people, her crimes are more serious than those of Khashoggi. Jamal was brutally murdered by his Saudi people inside his consulate, and his body was cut by axe just because he criticized the Saudi royal family. Inaz became an apostate from Islam, divorced her Arab husband Osama Hashim Saleh, married a Christian infidel man called Joseph Abraha, which is not permissible for a Muslim woman to do, did that without the knowledge and consent of her father, and rejected the Muslim husband Tariq Harun al-Ajabo, who married her with the consent of her wali and according to the Holy Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. There is a rumor spread among the Sudanese students which said Inaz became pregnant by an illegitimate baby before she married her handsome Ethiopian boyfriend, but she aborted the baby. The adulterous South Sudanese girl Mary Akal brought this rumor to the church and made many Christians believe in it. The apostate Inaz also sent 2 top Sudanese diplomats behind bars with serious charges of kidnap and attempt to send her to her country against her wish. Moreover, the leader of the Muslim Sudanese Brotherhood in Bombay went to jail for the same accusations. Because of her abominable apostasy, many Hindu journalists called the Prophet Muhammad a fanatic prophet, child abuser, rapist, murderer, invader, womanizer, and bloodthirsty terrorist. Many Muslims condemned the cowardly murder of the Saudi dissident journalist Jamal Adnan Khashoggi, but Inaz knows no Muslim in the world will condemn her murder. Even the Prophet Muhammad said the apostate from Islam must be killed. To avoid such a sad end, Joseph suggested that his wife must not go to apply for her passport renewal in person. They found an online application form of the Sudanese embassy and filled it. Then they printed it out and mailed it to the embassy. They had sent along with the application the expired passport and a check with the required amount of money for its renewal. They sent the application with a tracking number mailed to ensure that the embassy has received the passport and signed the reception paper and therefore cannot say they have not got it. Moreover, the couple had sent an empty return envelope with the necessary stamps fixed on it. So, the wise couple did not leave any loophole for the officials of the Sudanese embassy to deny the receipt of the expired passport or refuse to renew it and return it to their address in Bombay. The couple expected this process will not take a week time or at the most 10 days. When 2 weeks have passed and the renewed passport has not arrived, Inaz sent a fax to her embassy. She requested the embassy to send back her renewed passport. Neither a reply to her fax nor her renewed passport has come after waiting for another week. She then tried to talk through the phone to someone in her Sudanese embassy in New Delhi and find out what happened to her application and passport. All her phone calls have been forwarded to an answering machine. She left many messages begging the officials to respond to her calls and tell her what they had done to her passport. Finally, the couple decided to return to the inferno of India and live for a while in that place of torment and affliction of the miserable southern Sudanese students, which is called a free hotel. After going through another nightmare in that slow Dehradun train of the Indian poor outcasts, or the so-called defiled Hindu untouchables, the destitute couple once again reached New Delhi. This time, the poor lovers came to the capital of India during the winter season. It is more bearable and tolerable and less dangerous for the person to travel to the Arctic region than arriving in New Delhi in winter. The lovers felt as if they landed inside a freezer. In that freezing temperature, there is no heating system in buses, houses, schools, offices, stores, etc. Shaking and chilling to the bones, the miserable couple took a bus from the railway station to the Free Sudanese Hotel. The situation during the freezing winter in the Sudanese Free Hotel is the worst. Now no visitor can sleep in the compound unless he wants to freeze to death. In each one of the 2 rooms must sleep 7 to 10 asylum seekers. Inaz, being the only female visitor, has been allowed to share the only bed with another Indian girlfriend. The 2 girls have been given 1 blanket for covering. The blanket is old and full of holes. Joseph and the other 6 Sudanese boys have slept on the solid floor without covering. He has spent his night shaking while his teeth are hitting together like 2 hammers hitting each other. It is impossible for someone to sleep in that deep freeze without heating and a blanket for covering. Summer is more tolerable than winter in New Delhi. Bombay has the best weather in the world. There is neither winter nor summer in Bombay. The temperature does not climb to more than 30 Celsius degrees. You do not need a heating system, a winter jacket, or a blanket for covering. We should again bypass the suffering and hardships the persecuted couple are experiencing in the capital of India and go directly to the Sudanese embassy and try to find out what has happened to the expired passport of Inaz Ahmed Silla. First of all, she is not the first Sudanese student studying at the University of Bombay that the Sudanese embassy had tried to send back to her fatherland due to their bad behaviors, which are considered stigma to the bright name of Sudan. It happened there was a rebellious Sudanese student boy by the name of Salih Ahmed who was kidnapped by the corrupt Muslim police officers of Bombay and sent back to Sudan. Likewise, there was another so-called immoral Sudanese student girl by the name of Shadia Hassan who had been kidnapped by the Indian police and shipped to Khartoum via the same wicked plot. Those two students had not done what Inaz had done. Salih was returned to Sudan at the request of his family. He could not finish his studies and spent years fooling his parents that he was still working towards his science degree. Shadia was accused of being a hooker in Bombay and having many lovers just like a bitch in the streets of Colaba. Some Sudanese students claimed to have seen her sitting on motorbikes with her Indian guys and Arab men. When she went to renew her expired passport in the Sudanese embassy in New Delhi, it was seized from her, and on the same day, she was kidnapped and flown back to Sudan. Her embassy used some corrupt Indian police officers and deported her to her fatherland against her wish. The so-called repulsive crimes of the apostate Sudanese girl Inaz Ahmed Silla are innumerable and abominable. She is considered the most sinful, evil, and despicable Sudanese girl ever set foot on the soil of India. Every Sudanese official inside that den of kidnappers, which euphemistically called the Sudanese embassy in India, wants to send the infamous Inaz Ahmed Silla back to Khartoum to stand trial for apostasy and adultery, condemn, and put to death for her unpardonable crimes. The most intolerable of them is her open apostasy and friendship with an infidel Christian foreign student and committing adultery with him. Accordingly, as soon as her passport arrived, it was forwarded to the office of the ambassador himself. It was renewed but kept on hold. They want her to come personally and ask for her renewed passport. They had prepared everything for her kidnap and forcible transfer to Sudan. Chapter 53. The Missing Passport. Inaz has become extremely frightened and shaking like a reed when she has with much difficulty dragged her feet inside the Sudanese embassy. She has sensed danger is surrounding her from all directions after her eyes spotted long-bearded Sudanese officials. Every face has been written all over it as a dangerous Muslim terrorist. She felt as if she has entered into a stronghold of the terrorists of ISIS. They all look unfriendly and serious. There is not a single female among them. The frightened Inaz thought she has entered by mistake a mosque of the supporters of the Muhammadan Sunnah. If her brave Ethiopian husband is not with her and holding her hand, she may have turned her back and fled. Are they going to catch her and kill her like the Saudi dissident journalist Jamal Adnan Khashoggi was murdered inside his consulate in Turkey? They brutally murdered him, cut his body into pieces, and finally burned his remains in a furnace inside the residence of the consul. After assassinating her, those Muslim terrorists may cut her body with an axe into small parts and dump her remains in a hole somewhere outside New Delhi. Their Islamic Sharia ordered them not to bury the dead body of an apostate girl like her. Will they also assassinate her Ethiopian husband and likewise get rid of his slain body? Inaz tried to convince her husband to forget about her passport and their trip to Ethiopia and live illegally in India. Joseph told her the Indian police can deport her against her wish to Sudan if they found out she has no valid Sudanese passport and police permission to stay in their country. Inaz went to the first bearded man and spoke to him in a faint voice and introduced herself, her husband's name, and his relation to her, and explained the reason for her visit. My name is Inaz Ahmed Silla. This is my Ethiopian husband, Joseph Abraha. We both are studying medicine at the University of Bombay. I have come to inquire about my Sudanese passport. The bearded man flashed Inaz with a big smile and said happily, "What has happened to your passport?" It had expired over a month ago, and I sent it to the Sudanese embassy for renewal. It has been a long time since I mailed it to you. Can you tell me your full name again? My name is Inaz Ahmed Silla. The bearded man pretended to know nothing about the satanic female creature that is standing in flesh and bones in front of him. That is the way every Sudanese employee in the embassy refers to the despicable apostate and adulterous Sudanese girl who is studying medicine at the University of Bombay. If he happens to meet her in any governmental office in Sudan, he may not hesitate for a second to kill her. Nevertheless, he knows he is on Indian soil and not his Muslim land. He then entered her name on his computer and pretended to be going through many names and searching for information about her missing passport. After that, he picked up his cell phone and sent a text message to his ambassador. He did not wait for long before he received a reply. He carefully read it before he began to address Inaz. Yes, Mrs. Inaz Ahmed Salah, our embassy had received your application and along with it your expired passport. My computer showed that your application had been processed and your passport renewed and sent back to your address in Bombay. I haven't received it. Have you checked with the Bombay post office? I haven't, but why the Bombay post office wouldn't deliver my passport if they have received it? Well, there are cases of Sudanese students' passports got lost in the Indian mail. After all, India is well known for this kind of problem. Many times, Indian postmen were caught stealing the passports of foreign students. They do that because they want to sell them to those Indians who use them to travel overseas for drug trafficking or illegal immigration to the West. Those Indian thugs remove the photos of the foreign students from the stolen passports and replace them with their own pictures. What shall I do? I can't live in India without a valid passport. In that case, you have to either apply for a new Sudanese passport or else return to Bombay and complain about your missing passport to the police over there. Before you complain to the police, you must first check with your local post office. Instead of Inaz this time, her husband Joseph said to him, "Sir, can I ask you a question?" The bearded man eyed the handsome Ethiopian boy for some time before he said harshly, "What is your question? Can you give us the tracking number of the mail you had used to send my wife's renewed passport through?" "What tracking number are you talking about?" "My wife and I had sent an empty return envelope with already paid stamps. That envelope had a tracking number. If you had sent the renewed passport through that envelope, then New Delhi's post office would have given you the tracking number." "I don't know what you are talking about, and I don't know what you are trying to prove. I just want to know how you sent my wife's passport. Are you that kind of a dumb foreign student who is lacking intelligence?" I have already said, my computer showed that this Sudanese woman's passport had been renewed and sent back to her. Joseph does not like insults, but he somehow controlled his rising emotions. "How long it takes for me to get a new passport?" "Getting a new passport is a long process. No new passport will be created here. Our embassy will forward your application to the Ministry of Interior Affairs at Khartoum. It is the ministry which authorizes the issuing of a new passport. But I need my passport now because I am planning to travel with my Ethiopian husband to Addis Ababa. We have our air tickets with us." "I am sorry, madam. You need to wait at least 1 month before you get a new passport. Sometimes, you may get it after 2 months or more." "But why she can't get her old passport right now?" "What do you mean?" "You mean to say we are hiding her old passport and lying to her?" "I didn't mean to accuse the embassy. But the Sudanese embassy is responsible for her passport's misplacement, or it's lost in the mail." "Can you prove it?" Before Joseph answers his question, his wife Inaz cut him and said to the Sudanese Muslim terrorist, "Okay, sir, I want to apply for a new passport right now. Then go ahead and fill in the application form. You must submit 2 passport-size photos and pay the required fees." "I will do that, sir. Can you give me the application form now?" The bearded man took a form from his desk and handed it to Inaz. Then the extremely frightened Sudanese girl took hold of her Ethiopian husband's left hand and led the way out of the den of kidnappers and murderers of her people.